What's going on guys, Polygon Don here, and today I want to talk about another 5 hidden gems on the PS4. Games I think should be in everyone's collection but are rarely even spoken about. So I'm going to do that now. Let's get into it. Okay, and first up we have Skully, which is a 3D puzzle platformer with marble runner elements to it, and will see you control a reanimated skull through a gorgeous looking island carefully designed to give you all the platforming scenarios you'd want and need. Control of our little rolling hero might require a bit of adjusting to. Moving him around at speed with the left stick and jumping with the cross button whilst controlling the camera with the right stick can make the early stages a little frustrating. But it doesn't take long to understand the game's physics, and soon enough you'll be well on your way to zipping across the map and landing on platforms with deadly precision. After the initial setup, you'll meet a deity who will inform you that a war is raging on the island between him and his siblings and requires your help to restore the balance. He'll also tell you that along with the help of magical mud puddles, you'll be able to physically mutate into other forms. Our spherical little bonehead isn't only good for rolling around though, and does come with a few of his own tricks, such as being able to climb vertically up overgrown foliage. Not sure what he's using to climb with, but let's not get bogged down in the details. However, as fun as it is to roll around as a skull, and it is genuinely fun, it's with the upgraded forms of Skully that make the game come into its own. You'll control varying forms of mud buddies that range from speed to strength to agility etc, and come with their own respective special abilities that will gain you entry to new areas or complete some of the many environmental puzzles dotted throughout the world. The puzzles aren't terribly difficult, to be honest with you, just a bit time consuming. In fact, the most difficult aspect of the game is probably the platforming, and that's mainly down to the camera. You do have to wrestle with it occasionally. It's not a constant irritation at all, but it is noticeable when it does occur. In fact, if it wasn't for this, and the sections of the game where you transform into the slower moving sludge monsters, this could be a brilliant speedrunning game, as Skully can seriously shift through the gears. Story doesn't provide much to deep dive into, and the voice actors are certainly giving it their all, even if some of the dialogue doesn't truly land. The claymation cutscenes were a nice touch and welcome addition though. On the whole, I found this a beautiful and unique puzzle platformer that provided me with a good few hours of solid fun and regularly made me smile. Yes, it does have a few problems, but they were issues that I personally could overlook. The good definitely outweighed the bad, so to speak. Also, it's still really cheap to pick up physically. I got my copy for £8 new, so if you're into your 3D platformers, then I think this is definitely something you should have on your radar when you're next game hunting.
Well, all that's gone now. They all went crazy, been fighting each other for years. I tried everything I could to stop them, but I couldn't do it. Just wasn't strong enough. Back before this, we all had equal parts of this place. Now all I've got is this beach. They've taken over everything else I looked after. But I don't really care about that. I just want them to stop fighting. And Skully, that's where you come in.
Alright guys, next up we have Cloudpunk, an adventure game set in the futuristic city of Nivalis where you control Rania, a driver for an illegal delivery company using flying cars called hovers as their main form of transportation. The cyberpunk city of Nivalis is absolutely stunning, especially thanks to its voxel art style, and traversing it in the hover is a genuine pleasure. Controlling all 6 axes of the vehicle and swinging around neon lit buildings did evoke some strong Blade Runner vibes on more than a few occasions. Gameplay is essentially just that though, driving from point A to point B in your hover or on foot, delivering payloads and occasionally people, sometimes within a time limit but mostly at your leisure. That dialogue choices and the odd collectible is pretty much all you'll be doing. It's a very chilled out game, and something I wasn't expecting, to be honest. I won't lie, I was a little disappointed at the lack of gameplay at first, but it wasn't long until the dialogue between the NPCs and the main characters drew me in to such a degree that I found myself going back to it every time I got an opportunity. The story is excellent, a bleak sci-fi adventure that at times is painful and tragic, and delivered brilliantly by the voice cast. Getting to know the various characters throughout my playthrough reminded me more of something like a visual novel, especially as the interactions you have with them and the responses you provide will shape the rest of the game and influence its outcome. In fact, I wish I went into this with my expectations a bit more in check and thought of it more as a visual novel from the beginning, as I probably would have spent fewer of those first few hours waiting for the lasers to start blasting and more time absorbing the story and its characters. Speaking of the story, the plot centres around Rania, as you follow her during the first night of her new job as a delivery driver in Nivalis, a futuristic city built above the sea on giant skyscraper-like buildings. A recent immigrant to Nivalis, Rania had to flee her home in the Eastern Peninsula to escape loan sharks. You'll be accompanied by Rania's former dog, Camus, as his digital mind will be installed into your hover and will accompany you everywhere you go, providing comic relief through his naive outlook to life and moments of insight for Rania as she realises the desperation of those around her in the lower depths of Nivalis. Nivalis is ruled by corporations and suffers from extreme social inequalities, with the upper classes literally living higher up the skyscrapers, with the richest among them living above the permanent black clouds that cover the city.
Welcome to my humble restaurant in the rain. What can I get you?
Meeting the city's hilariously strange and sometimes sinister inhabitants, she keeps hearing the name Cora mentioned and decides to do some moonlighting as a detective during her shift to find out more. This takes us to the game's central plot, involving a malfunctioning sentient AI in control of the city and a private investigator android who speaks like he's in a 1920s gangster flick and in the third person, which admittedly I found a lot funnier than I probably should have.
So you're a private investigator and your name is Huxley.
The dame was as sharp as my ex-wife's parting words before she left me and moved back in with her mother.
I had a really good time with this game in the end, with its captivating story and fleshed out characters having completely won me over. If you like your narrative driven games, or if you just like what you've seen and heard, I think this is definitely worth picking up and checking out.
Margaret sought answers. But the goddess did not speak. There was only the faint whisper of something dark, something hungry. The old seer's bones felt the weight of their age as she climbed. The only thought on her mind, has it begun again?
And third on the list we have Children of Morta, which is a deceptively tough action RPG with roguelike elements using a beautifully detailed pixel art style and genuinely engrossing and well written story. The game follows the Bergson family, caretakers of Mount Morta who are entrusted with defending it against a corruption spreading through Morta and beyond. You'll gain control of almost all of the members of the large Bergson clan through story progression, and each have their own unique abilities, making each run feel different. That, coupled with the dungeons themselves being procedurally generated, makes no two runs ever feel the same. Now, I'm not a massive roguelike or roguelite fan in general, I usually take or leave them, but occasionally one sinks its teeth into me and it's hard to think of anything else. Dead Cells and Hades did that for me previously, and now Children of Morta has joined the list. I honestly can't say enough good things about this game. Aside from it being one of the best examples of pixel art graphics out there, its gameplay is slick, responsive and highly addictive. It's a roguelike, so you do lose the buffs and power-ups you've accumulated in a run if you die, but there are certain things you do hold on to, such as the XP earned through combat and the game's currency, which you'll use back at the Bergson's residence to level up certain aspects of your character. And the best thing about this is that while each member of the family levels up individually using XP gained through combat, the leveling up done back at the Bergsons' residence, health, strength and speed for example, applies to all playable characters. It basically eliminates the traditionally frustrating element of games in this genre, for me at least, as all runs, however long or incredibly short, are still meaningful and contribute to progression. If you get wiped out after only 4 minutes but manage to collect a few shrapnels of gold along the way, then it wasn't totally worthless. Well, that's what I tell myself anyway. Occasionally you'll enter an area of the dungeon and a special type of battle will commence, preceded by a short cutscene. These aren't crucial to progression but usually impact the story in some form or another, rewarding you with a cutscene back at home when you next return, or additions to the residence itself and further fleshed out the incredibly rich and detailed world. Story-wise, I'm going to keep it super brief as it surprised me how good it was, and I'd want the same experience for any of you who decide to pick it up. I'll just say this though, it packs an emotional punch that most narrative games could only dream of achieving. For an action RPG roguelite, the story completely blew me away and is something I recommend everyone experience. Like other greats in the genre, I personally think it's something I'll be revisiting for years and is a great addition to the collection.
Kevin returned from his saga with barely a scratch, yet he found no appreciation from his family, especially his father. Despite having Linda on his side, his father was still mad at him for endangering himself and worrying them all, including his pregnant mother. His favorite line, asking how he could be so inconsiderate. He wondered whether Uncle Ben would understand his bravery and initiative better. With his heroic act unrecognized, the young boy waited, frustrated, expecting more punishment. What Kevin had not expected was his parents' reaction. Heartened by his courage, his father was going to teach him the ways of battle, and his mother was far from the frail and always worried housewife she had seemed. A Bergson through and through, she gave him her blessing and asked only that he temper his courage with caution.
Alright, so next up we have Inertial Drift, which is an arcade racer drawing heavy inspiration from games such as Ridge Racer and even something more modern like Horizon Chase Turbo. What sets this game apart, however, is its truly unique spin on controlling the cars themselves and more specifically the way they drift. Unlike all other car racing games that came before it, Inertial Drift decides to completely throw the racing game rulebook out the window and has you controlling the car's drift with the right analog stick. You still steer with the left stick, but you swing the vehicles back out with the right stick to initiate a drift. Took a few runs to rewire my brain from years of playing literally any other arcade racer, but once I did I found it to be a frenetically fast paced and surprisingly deep racing game, with a gorgeous 90s Dayglow inspired design. Honestly, this is so much fun and an absolutely fantastic pick up and play title. It combines a mix of races, head-to-heads, time trials and style showdowns. With over 20 tracks to race on and around 16 different cars to choose from, each having their own weight and behaviour that differs wildly between them all, it gives you an abundance of content and replayability. Mastering each car, the tracks and the bonus reverse tracks will please any time trial addict out there, but there's also a really charming story mode to play through if time trials aren't your thing, filled with colourful characters that genuinely provide decent advice about how to shave those crucial seconds off your time and get the most out of your car. I can see how it might feel a little repetitive to someone not especially keen on racing games, or even for someone super into them with games like Gran Turismo, etc. But if, like me, you want your racing games to defy all logic and physics and just be fast, fun and addictive, then this is the one. It hits that arcadey drifting itch like nothing else on the console in my opinion, and is incredibly satisfying to master. As I said, the Maverick control setup will take a bit of adjusting and brain rewiring, but once familiar, you'll be drifting off into the sunset and leaving your opponents in the smoke of your burnt rubber in no time. Brilliant and unique, this isn't something that should be passed up if you're into these kind of races. Still very cheap and easily found both new and second hand, I'm super happy to have this in my collection, and I think you'll be too if you decided to give it a spin.
エージェントアルーシェ、あなたに任務を与えます。巫女リリアーナをこの教皇庁までエスコートするのです。これは重要な任務ですよ。くれぐれも。
リリアーナ。
And lastly, we have Knights of Azure 2, Bride of the New Moon, a hack-and-slash action RPG set in a gothic fairy tale world by developers Gust. It is a numbered sequel, but you don't need to have played the first game prior to this. You can easily jump into the series here and not feel lost or confused regarding the plot. You will play as Luce and Artoria, a seasoned fighter and member of the Curia, an organisation created to defend the land and its people from the Fiends, demonic beasts that, after being tainted by the blue blood of the Night Lord, the antagonist of the first game, still roam the lands looking for humans to devour. Now there are rumours that the Moon Queen has appeared as the new ruler of the demons, and if she isn't dealt with quickly, could make the whole world fall into an eternal sleep, which isn't as relaxing as it sounds. Straight away, Luce is tasked with escorting a priestess to the Curia's HQ. Turns out the priestess in question is Liliana, a childhood friend of Luce. Unfortunately, the happy reunion is cut short when Luce realises that Liliana has been chosen as a sacrifice to seal away the Moon Queen. Still coming to terms with what she's been asked to do and barely enough time to process any of it, Luce and Liliana are attacked and Luce is killed in battle. Lucky for her, the Curia has one of the best doctors in town in the form of Dr. Camilla, who manages to revive her as an artificial half-demon hybrid. Unfortunately, Liliana fled during the attack, and finding her becomes the main focus of the game's first few hours. Gameplay is unique in that you have a time limit on missions. The moment you step out of the safety of Hotel Eterna, which acts as a hub and base of operations, a timer in the top right corner of the screen starts to count down, and not completing a mission before it reaches 0 means you start again. Now, I'm not usually a fan of games that hinder exploration. I like to take my time with them, learning the lay of the land and finding hidden loot or collectibles at my own pace, and to be frank, having a constantly ticking timer does feel like the ultimate enemy of that kind of playstyle. But I have to admit, in this instance at least, I actually really like the mechanic. It propels the game forward, providing a unique sense of urgency and forces you to constantly weigh up what's most important: fighting fiends to level up, exploration, or making a beeline for the main mission marker on the map to ensure it's complete in time. I should add that it's also fairly forgiving as far as in-game timers go. You can increase the time allocated on runs by leveling up or learning new abilities, so it really isn't that bad. However, as well as a timer limiting the amount of time spent out in the wild, there's also a limited amount of nights available to the player to finish the whole game. Represented by the phases of the moon, every time Luce sleeps, the moon's phase will change, taking it one step closer to a new moon. If this happens before you can seal away the Moon Queen, it's game over. However, defeating certain powerful enemies like bosses at the end of chapters, etc., actually reverses the procedure substantially, granting you more time to save the world. All of these restrictions probably make it sound like a tedious time management sim, but in all honesty, in the beginning stages I barely noticed it, and in the later stages you just have to be a bit more efficient with your missions, that's it. Nothing ever felt impossible or insurmountable, and as I said previously, it provided a sense of urgency that kept me pushing through the game. Combat is fast, hacky, and very slashy, and you'll be accompanied by one of the many lilies on each mission. These are NPCs that will aid you in battle, coming with their own unique abilities that you can assign orders to. You'll also find and set free servants, which are like friendly fiends, little monsters that can attack enemies on your behalf and can even transform into powerful weapons for Eluce to wield, allowing you to switch up combat techniques on the fly. Back at the Hotel Eterna, between missions, Eluce can level up, learn new abilities, increase the power of her servants, buy supplies, drink hot chocolate, stargaze on the roof, and swim in the pool with her friends wearing the latest in JRPG swimwear fashion. There's definitely some fan service going on in this game, but as far as JRPGs go, it's actually quite tasteful in comparison. There's also loads of extra content via side quests to discover, but as mentioned, there are only so many hours, or in this case minutes, in the day, so choosing what to do will be a big part of your first playthrough. And I haven't even touched on the writing. The friendships that develop between Eluce and her lilies really is quite special, and I found myself pleasantly surprised at the subtle displays of love between this beautiful cast of characters. If you like your JRPGs and want something a little different, or if you're more of a fan of hack and slash games but are tired of all the male machismo that usually comes with them, then give this a go. A short, sweet and truly unique action RPG that is a welcome addition to the collection.
汎用めふっルーエンハイドを返してもらうルールド教団かやだねやっお前も汎用かうるさい俺はお前たちとは違う
Well, that was another 5 hidden gems on the PS4 from my collection. Hopefully you guys saw something that piqued your interest but might have previously eluded you. I personally think they're all great games, and hopefully you will too if you decide to check any of them out. But for the next few videos, I think I'm going to focus on Nintendo. It's not that I'm done with PlayStation or anything, I've got loads more I still want to talk about on Sony's platforms. I just want to vary the output. So expect some Switch, Wii and GameCube content coming soon. For now though, I'm bouncing. Take care, be good and game on.